Hello viewers and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today we have a match between Eric Keilback playing as Zarathur against George Tinkham, who's going to be piloting the Eldar. Both of these players have debuted in my Community Spotlight series before. Eric did Urian Rackhearth, an interview regarding that warlord, whereas George has been in a gameplay match before against Sam Mann, and he also did the Subject Omega X 62113 upcoming Warlord video. We can see our players have both drawn their starting hands, their starting resources. They're presently deciding on mulligans. Looks like the initiative is going to be in the hands of our Eldar player. Before I discuss our planet layout, looks like we see a Void Pirate as the opening move of the game at planet number 4. And we also see a Heretic Inventor played opposite that Void Pirate. Actually, I guess just played, and our Eldar player is ultimately going to choose the Heretic Inventor to go to planet number 5. Taking a look at our planets, we've got Eloith is planet number 1, which allows for digging of cards. Planet 2 is Iridial, which removes damage. Barlas is number 3, which does random card discard. Taurus is number 4, which rewards players for keeping their unit total lower than their opponent. And planet number 5 is Farron, which allows the routing of target non-warlord units. We see our second play from our Eldar player be a Warlock Destructor played at the first planet, which is going to allow him to bully and push around any opposing forces there. Of course, Eldorath's ability is going to allow him to tap out a single unit through his effect as soon as he's committed to a planet, whereas Zarathur serves to amplify damage. Our second play from our Chaos player happens to be an Orc Cannon, which is combat action. Exhaust it to pick a planet, deal damage there. That's going to work fantastically alongside Zarathur, because while the Chaos player takes 1 indirect damage, it does happen to be amplified by his interrupt effect to increase that damage to 2. It looks like we see an Eldritch Corsair, a somewhat scarcely played, colloquially referred to as Warlord Groupie style unit, played to unit Planet 3. It's 3 cost, 1 command, 2 attack, plus 2 attack while at a planet with a Warlord, and it's got 3 base hit points. So a lot of formidable combat units coming out of our Eldar player thus far. He's presently at 1 resource, 4 cards, and as we see, a Rotten Plaguebearer is deployed to planet number 4 by our Chaos player, who himself is down to 3 resources, 4 cards. That's a fantastic means of allowing Zarathur to obliterate opposition just because it deals damage prior to the ranged skirmish round. Zarathur can amplify that damage, of course. We see a Slith Mercenary, probably the final play from our Eldar player, played opposite the Heretic Inventor at planet number 5, and it looks like our Chaos player, Eric, is actually going to purchase control of the Slith Mercenary, so that counts as his action. I can't imagine that Eldorath has anything left with his 0 resources, unless he happens to have a promotion or something like that. So at the present moment, it looks like command is looking to be won on 2 different planets by Eldar, and on 1 different planet by Chaos. In regard to where they're looking to send warlords, just in looking at the planet icons, the earliest any player could win the game is going to be planet number 4 through Strong Point, and that's presently Taurus. In regard to battle abilities, it looks as though our Eldorath player currently has the lower unit total, so Taurus is going to be an appealing target for him, especially considering he's got that Void Pirate there, but then again, that Rotten Plaguebearers could deal out a little bit of damage. The Warlock Destructor is likely to go unopposed at planet number 1. Planet number 5 would also be a decent contest for Eldorath. just because if he wins resources, he could potentially purchase back that Slith Mercenaries. We see Zarathur go to planet number 3, opposite that Eldritch Corsair, and Eldorath ends up going to planet number 4, so trumping this Rotten Plague Bearers and making sure that his Void Pirate can generate him an additional card. So it looks like Command is going to be won by Eldorath on planet 1 and 4, whereas Chaos wins at 2 and 5. It looks as though our Chaos player is going to pull in 2 cards and 2 resources, whereas Eldorath ended up pulling in 4 cards and 1 resource. I believe he did not forget his Void Pirate, took a moment to ensure that he recalled that, and as combat phase begins, there's no mobile. The Rotten Plague Bears here is of course exhausted by Eldorath, so it's not going to be able to trigger its action. Eldorath by himself is not going to be able to swing hard enough to kill or threaten a kill of that Rotten Plague Bearers, but he's still free from taking any damage. Zarathur is looking like he's in a very poor position against this Eldritch Corsair, but he's almost certainly going to be retreating as his first action. It looks like for combat, Whiteblade happens to have 3 resources in hand. He's also got a grand total of 6 cards, whereas our Eldorath player has 1 resource and 7 cards. We, of course, didn't see a Foresight or anything like that. Eric certainly has enough resources to pay for something like a Warp Storm or a Nurgling Bomb. He could do a Tzeentch's Firestorm for 3 or 4 damage if it's at the location where Zarathur happens to be present at. Of course, the first planet battle is won by Eldorath. He happens to trigger Eluith's ability, which lets him look at the top 3 cards of his deck, pick one of those to put in his hand, and of course, put the other 2 at the bottom of his library. This Warlock Destructor's now in his HQ. It looks like Zarathur is actually attacking the Eldritch Corsair, so he's probably going to be, well, he's swinging for an amplified 2, and I can only imagine we'll see some sort of event to back that up. So is George going to decide to use shields? I suppose he decides not to, so the Corsair takes 2 points of damage. I imagine Eric happens to have an Archon's Terror or something to that effect in his hand. And of course we see the Orc Cannon trigger, so 1 damage to Zarathur and the Eldritch Corsair is eliminated. So that's 3 resources and 1 card dispatched fairly handily. And that's a bit of a setback for Eldorath there. There's a lot of units controlled by our Chaos player at the present moment. The battle ability is going to be triggered. Barlas is going to force George to discard a card at random, and it ended up being a copy of Slith Mercenaries, which actually hurts quite a lot, just because that's so cheap, it's so strong in command and attacking and defending, that would have been a pretty reasonable card to try and keep him in the game or allow him to get back in the game in a command sense. But of course, Taurus is almost certainly going to be won by Eldorath. He takes a swing himself at this Rotten Plague Bearers. Eric chooses to take that damage. He does not shield against it. And as soon as this battle is over, at the present moment, Eldorath happens to have fewer units. He could draw 3 additional cards or 3 additional resources. And currently, we only see 1 resource and 7 cards for Eldorath, so whichever he ultimately grabs, if anything, we shall see. Eric does not retreat his Rotten Plague Bearers, but we do see it exhaust to deal 1 damage to Eldorath at an action speed prior to Eldorath's attack. So, are we going to see a shield? No, we do not see a shield, so the Rotten Plague Bearers are destroyed, and that's going to make Eldorath the victor at planet number 3. At the present moment, the units in play are tied, so that actually denies the ability to trigger that battle effect. I almost mistook this Orc Cannon sitting out here for a unit because of that Snotling sitting there atop the cannon in the art. And that's going to bring us to headquarters phase. Each player happens to accumulate 4 additional resources, 2 cards. Currently, Whiteblade, the Chaos player, has 7 resources, 8 cards, whereas George happens to have 5 resources, 9 cards. So our new 5th planet is Planum. We happen to see another heretic inventor played by our initiative token possessing Chaos player. So the Chaos player, Eric, and Whiteblade, these are all synonyms in reference to our Zarathur player. It's going to be up to Eldorath to decide where this heretic inventor is going to go. It's looking like planet number 5, so this is an incredibly affordable, very nasty unit. We see quite a bit of a leading command presence for our Chaos player. Of course, this Slith Mercenaries could change hands at any time. Planum would allow non-warlord units to be moved, so we'll kind of have to see what happens here. I suppose George did happen to pay for his Warlock Destructor, so that remains in play. He paid for that forced reaction at the beginning of the combat round, and in regard to where he's going to be sending this unit, he might want to try and protect Taurus, he might want to win Barlas. I suppose at the present moment, it looks like Eldorath did happen to win 1 technology icon, so the earliest that he can still presently win is going to be Taurus if he starts accumulating strong point icons. So at present, we are waiting on... It looks like George just played an Incubus Warrior out, trumping the command of the Heretic Inventor at planet number 5, and that would be a fantastic opportunity for Zarathur to swing in and win command, and then allow his Orc Cannon to deal out 2 points of damage, almost certainly killing this Incubus Warrior. That's going to be just a very potent support over the course of the remainder of the game. It's now Eric's turn to play. He does a Splintered Path Acolyte to the first planet. It's 1 command, so it'll allow him to reel in that card if uncontested, and he can sacrifice it to decrease the cost of a demon by 2. So at some point we might see a Gleeful Plague Beast, we might see any range of different powerful elite chaos demons. And it's back to George. It looks like we see yet another copy of the Incubus Warrior, this time played out to planet number 2, which is going to be a 2-card bonus for George, which is definitely pretty significant. He's now out of resources, which means he cannot win the Slith Mercenary. It looks as though at the present moment, presuming that command stays as it is, okay, we see a Zave's Split Tongue played to planet number 5 by our Chaos player. So at the present moment, it looks like, depending on Warlord commitments, it might only be 1 resource coming in for George, which is not going to be a sufficient number in order to procure that Slith Mercenary. So in regard to deployment, Eldorath will be able to tap out an enemy unit. It's possible he could go to Farron to, say, exhaust the Heretic Inventor. He could win resources to purchase that Slith Mercenary, but then Eric could potentially purchase it back, and it could become just a big, brutal slugfest. I suppose we're ultimately going to see Zarathur and Eldorath both go to planet number 1. So the Warlock Destructor arrives exhausted. Eldorath is going to end up exhausting the Splintered Path Acolyte through his effect. We only have 2 resources at the moment for Whiteblade, but that's going to be changing. No command is going to be 1 at the first planet, whereas command at planets 2 and 3 is going to be won by Eldorath. Planet 4 and 5 are going to be won by Eric. And of course, we've got a Void Pirate in play for George. So Eric pulls in a grand total of 1 card, 3 resources, whereas we see 4 cards and 1 resources for Eldorath. So at the present moment, we have 5 resources, 6 cards for Zarathur, and 1 resource, 11 cards for Eldorath. So he's got a a hand that has to be full of shield cards, has to be full of events. We did not see a foresight or anything of that nature. Perhaps he has dooms in his deck, but I think one of the major issues at the moment is he's really struggling to fund any of those effects, whereas Zarathur has kind of a much nicer balance available. He could deploy a Warp Storm at any time. We could see this Orc Cannon. It's all but certain to, I suppose, fire. And remember that since we're fighting at Iridial, this is going to be the winner gets to remove all damage from a target unit, so it's definitely going to be a hot little contest here, just because the victor is essentially going to be able to clear away any damage they may incur. It looks like dear Eric is maybe struggling with the arrows, which is something he was not familiar with prior to the onset of this game. We do eventually see Zarathur take a swing for 2 at the Warlock Destructor. We see an Empower discarded as one of, I'm sure, myriad shield cards in Eldorath's hand, which completely negates that 2 points of damage. In regard to what Eric could have in hand, he might have an Infernal Gateway, which is a 1-cost event, put up to a 3-cost Chaos unit in play. There's all kinds of nastiness we might expect. For Eldorath, there's not really much he can pay for with just one resource. We see Eldorath successfully manage to kill that Splintered Path Acolyte with a swing of 1. We've yet to see this Orc Cannon fire. I suppose it does now fire. I can only imagine it's going to be targeting Iridial, and that's a lot of hit points left on Eldorath. It's a lot of hit points on that Warlock Destructor. We could ultimately see something like a Tzeentch's Firestorm for as much as 6 points of damage, or, Zarathur could be holding back for a Warp Storm to try and kill off both of these units at once, but like I mentioned earlier, I can only imagine that George has just a hand absolutely full of shield cards, and if he manages to survive this battle, if Zarathur ends up being bloodied or retreating, then things are going to look really bad, and we do end up seeing a copy of Infernal Gateway played at the very end of the initial round of combat, and that's going to put a Zarathur's Flamers into play, so it's going to be able to attack for 3 and can be sacrificed to deal out another 3 modified damage thanks to Zarathur. If it happens to be in play at the end of phase, it is sacrificed, but at the present moment it is taking a mighty swing of 3 at this 3/4 Warlock Destructor. And let's see if we happen to see any shield cards from George. And it looks as if we do not. He gradually accumulates an entire 3 damage tokens onto that Warlock Destructor. The initiative is currently in the hands of the Chaos player, which is going to work out extraordinarily well for him, because as all these units are ready, Eldorath has to decide, does he want to stay or not? It looks like Eric is definitely staying. He's going to be able to attack first during combat here. The Zarathur's Flamers is going to be attacking for 3, and then it can be sacrificed for 3 to target a non-warlord unit, so Zarathur is going to be able to outpace Eldorath when it comes to dealing damage, so he should be able to force Eldorath off of the planet if it's purely a shielding thing. We do see Eldorath retreat, and is he going to be leaving this Warlock Destructor? No, the Warlock Destructor does retreat, so it looks like Iridial is going to be won by Zarathur. He's going to be able to clear all the damage off of one target unit. Zarathur is the only damaged Chaos unit in play, so it only makes sense that he'll be pulling points of damage off of Zarathur. So very, very well done. There are no more battles that are going to be taking place, and of course, at the very end of battle, this Zarathur's Flamers is going to be leaving play. So it was not sacrificed. It could have been used to destroy this Warlock Destructor, but now at the present moment, George is going to be left during the following round's deploy phase with the kind of uncomfortable decision, does he want to pay 1 resource just to keep a 1 hit point Warlock Destructor in play? It might be worth it, considering if he has Empower, if he has a whole ton of shield cards in hand, but that's definitely going to have to remain to be seen. The headquarters phase occurs. We have 8 resources and 6 cards for Zarathur. We have 5 resources, 12 cards for Eldorath. Eldorath does ultimately decide to let the Warlock Destructor be destroyed, as opposed to allowing it to die during combat. I suppose it just ends up discarded during our deploy phase. The initiative token now rests in the hands of Eldorath, and our new 5th planet, our final planet on the board, is now Karnath. So it looks as if one planet icon of each type is under the possession of Zarathur, and we only have one blue technology icon for Eldorath. Eldorath happens to play a copy of Rogue Trader to our new 5th planet, so he's currently got 3 locations where he could potentially win command. Zarathur decides to play a copy of Slaaneish's Temptation out at planet number 4, which is going to encourage Eldorath to fight a battle at that location. So the cost of each enemy unit deployed to any planet other than number 4 is increased by 1, which is very significant, seeing as how Eldorath only has a mere 4 resources remaining. And as soon as a battle takes place at the attached planet, currently number 4 Planum, then this attachment is destroyed. But seeing as how Zave's Split Tongue and a 3 attack, 3 defense Heretic Inventor is sitting there, that's a lot of nasty stuff. And for each and every enemy unit that is destroyed at that planet, for example, there's an Incubus Warrior sitting right there, which is fantastic fodder for this Orc Cannon. That's going to mean 1 additional Cultist token through Zave's Split Tongue for our Zarathur player, with which to decrease the cost of all subsequent demons played. So it currently is looking to be George Eldorath's turn. We do see a copy of Starbane's Council played out at planet number 4, which means that it's all but certain we are going to see Eldorath and or Zarathur head to this planet to make sure that there's some pretty nasty battling take place. In regard to command icons, both players are currently tied. That Starbane's Council only cost 3, because it's played at the Slaaneish's Temptation planet, and we see a Splintered Path Acolyte played to our 5th planet to directly oppose Eldorath's Rogue Trader. Eldorath happens to pass, he's completely out of resources, and we now see an Ammo Depot played out for 1 with Zarathur. He immediately exhausts it to draw 1 card because he has 3 or fewer cards in hand, and we see a second Orc Cannon in play. So extraordinarily nasty, because now Zarathur can absolutely obliterate whatever planet he happens to be sitting across, just because each of these Orc Cannons are going to be 2 indirect damage to the opponent, whereas Zarathur only has to contest with an unmodified 1 resource. It looks like there was a slight mistake on behalf of George. He did pay the increased cost for that Starbane's Council, but one of our spectators has pointed that out, and the mistake has now been rectified. So it seems as though Eric has now passed. We've got to see where they'd like to commit their warlords. We could see Eldorath try to commit to this planet, Planum, to try and clear out that Slaaneish's Temptation no matter what, to also try to kill Zave's or the Heretic Inventor through exhausting it, and then Starbane's Council attacking for 5, and Zarathur has any number of different options. He could go to the 1st or 2nd planet just to try to win command there. In regard to taking a look at the planet icons, Eric does choose to go for planet number 1, so that would be a second strong point icon for him. And then, of course, if he happens to win at Taurus next turn, that could be the game. Eldorath does happen to go to planet number 4, and what is he going to pick to exhaust? Is he going to tap out the Heretic Inventor? Yes. So the 3 attack, 3 defense unit is exhausted. So there's going to be a battle at the 1st and 4th planets. Initiative is going to be in the hands of Zarathur as well as Eldorath. So Zarathur is going to get a first opportunity to swing for 2 at this Incubus Warrior. If it's not destroyed, he's going to have a fantastic opportunity to use 1 or both of these Orc Cannons to ensure that Zarathur does not take 3 points of damage in return. And of course, it's totally unknown as to whether Zarathur has any shield cards in hand. We see Eldorath rake in 3 cards and 2 resources in total, which puts him at 3 resources, 13 total cards, which is enough for an Empower. If he feels as though it's necessary, it's still not quite enough for Doom, and of course our Chaos player is nowhere close to having any units in his headquarters. It looks like Eric ended up getting 2 cards and 2 resources himself, giving him 5 resources, 5 cards in total. So we could see all sorts of nasty effects, like his second copy of the signature event, Infernal Gateway, similar to a Gift of Isha, or we could see a Zinch's Firestorm or a Warp Storm. It all kind of remains to be seen. Of course, our battle at the first planet does occur. Zarathur manages to eliminate that Incubus Warrior entirely unopposed, and this is going to give him an opportunity to trigger Barlas to do a random discard from Eldorath's hand. So it's not guaranteed to be something good, but by the merit of being random, it could very well be some sort of linchpin, and let's see what exactly it is going to be. It looks like we see the discard of his signature support. Eldorath loses his Aleatok Shrine, which would have allowed him to ready Eldar units that happen to move. Now there's going to be a battle at the planet Planum, and the Incubus Warrior, controlled by Eldorath, is going to take a swing for 3 at this copy of Zave's Split Tongue. We've yet to see those Orc Cannons fire. Does Zarathur have shields? I suppose he's not chosen to use any abilities. We see Eric, of course, capture our first planet, which puts him at 2 strong point icons, 1 technology icon. He's currently trying to decide what he wants to do in regard to this receipt of an attack of 3. Zave's Split Tongue, of course, it's going to be very important to try to keep him alive, because for each and every enemy unit destroyed, that's going to be a potential cultist token. And of course, he does allow Zave's to die, and now that sets up this heretic inventor to be outright obliterated by Starbane's council here. So I suppose this is just a fantastic opportunity for Eric to try to conserve each and every card and resource, every single shield, every event, every attachment, and all sorts of stuff like that, just to probably guarantee that he can win on this next planet, Taurus, and especially considering that his unit count, well, I suppose Eldorath's unit count is currently sitting at 5, whereas our Chaos player's unit count is at 4. That could potentially allow him to keep his total nice and low for Taurus in case Eldorath would end up winning. But unfortunately for Zarathur, Planum allows the Starbane's Council here to be moved to our new first planet, and that's going to set Eldorath up very favorably indeed to try and block a victory for Zarathur. But in regard to actually accumulating icons to win, we can't see a victory for Eldorath now until the very final planet of the game. There's no longer enough blue icons to win any earlier than that, so it looks like there's maybe a bit of an uphill battle for him. We've got 9 resources, 7 cards in the hand of Zarathur, and 7 resources, a staggering 14 cards for Eldorath as we pass the headquarters phase and move into a following round. Taurus is, of course, our new first planet. That Slaanesha's Temptation was discarded at the conclusion of the battle last turn, and we see Rograk's Bloodhand deployed to the first planet. So our initiative token is in the hands of the Chaos player. I suppose last round we didn't actually see Orc Cannon fire, which was quite the mistake on Eric's part. That could have easily obliterated something like this Incubus Warrior. Hopefully that mistake doesn't come back to bite him in the ass too badly, but that was fairly egregious there. Rograk's Bloodhand is fantastic because not only is he brutal, but as soon as a unit has been destroyed, not sacrificed, but outright destroyed, his attack value is doubled. And of course, Zarathur happens to add a single point of damage onto whatever Rograx ends up dealing out. If he happens to incur 4 points of damage, that of course puts him at an attack value of 6. As soon as Bloodthirst triggers, that's 12. With Zarathur, that's 13. So we could see anything just outright obliterated, but it's almost guaranteed Eldorath is going to be exhausting him during the initial round of combat. We see a Black Guardians deployed to the first planet. They're a 2/4, no command icons. They're a very reasonably costed unit. They're very hardy. They're likely to stick there. We've got a Gleeful Plague Beast that's going to be positioned at the first planet, so that's going to be very nasty, because as soon as the combat phase begins, after any opportunity to mobile units about, all units at the planet are going to end up taking a single point of damage, and if Zarathur is present, that does end up getting amplified. So Zarathur is all but certainly going to be committed to this first planet, and I can only imagine that Eldorath is going to be sent there as well. I think it's all going to come down to what kind of events some of our players have here. It's looking like command at the present moment is going to be tied at the first planet, should both warlords go there. Resources are going to be 1 at planet number 2 for Eric, and then a combination of cards and resources for our Eldar player. We see a Spirit Seer Arathal, which costs 3 resources, but it's going to allow him to, well, not quite tie command, unless he purchases this Slith Mercenaries. I suppose there's not really any reason not to, just because he's not winning command currently. If he does invest those 2 resources, he'll be able to gain back a couple resources. We now see a Void Pirate played, also opposite the Slith Mercenary and Heretic Inventor, so that means 3 command versus 3 command. Eldar only has 1 resource left, but now it's looking as if everything is pretty much tied completely, and we do see a Rogue Trader also played to planet number 2, so that's going to be a staggering 3 resources and 1 card coming in at that planet for Eldar, as opposed to a whole lot of nothing. So not only is he depriving Eric of all of that income, but he's pulling in quite a lot himself. So once again, hopefully the transgression of forgetting to activate these Orc Cannons last turn isn't going to be really punishing Eric now in what could very well be the very last turn of the game. In regard to picking where to commit warlords, we could see both players choose planet number 1. Apart from that, I suppose the planet number 3 is another win condition for Eric, and then of course we don't happen to see a win condition for Eldar until the very final planet. We have 31 cards remaining in hand for Chaos, 25 for Eldar. We do see both players go to planet number 1, so this is going to be very exciting. Eldorath, is he going to tap out the Gleeful Plague Beast, or is he going to tap out the Rograk's Bloodhand? So as soon as this Plague Beast procs its ability at the beginning of the combat phase after mobile, it's all but certainly going to be killing that Void Pirate, and then that is going to trigger Rograk's Bloodhand, but of course he's exhausted, so it's not going to result in any bloodthirst activation during that first round. And of course, because Rograx is tapped out, that means Taurus is going to generate income, as is this Void Pirate for our Eldar player. So it's looking like there's going to be a lot of stuff going on for him. We see a little bit of a mispress from Eric. He does not have an action. So we see a total of 4 cards and 5 resources pulled in for Eldorath. He's now got 5 resources. We could see 1 Empower, and we could potentially see a Gift of Isha. We could see 2 Gift of Ishas. It all kind of remains to be seen. For our Chaos player, we do not see any resources whatsoever, which extremely badly hurts. We aren't going to be able to see a Tzeentch's Firestorm. There's no Warp Storm. There's no Infernal Gateway, Nurgling Bomb, Archon's Terror. None of these things are going to be able to come to our Chaos player's aid, and there's quite a bit of opposition staring him down. So maybe Eric happens to have a mitt full of shield cards, but it's all going to remain to be seen. Presently, it looks like our Eldar player's unit total is much higher if he ends up winning this battle at Taurus, so he's going to prevent the opponent from winning the game, but but it seems as though if he does win this battle, he's likely not going to be able to benefit from that ability. So we now see things pass into combat, and things aren't looking great for the Chaos player, but we'll have to see how things go. The Gleeful Plague Beast is going to burst off. It deals 1 damage, of course, to all of these Chaos units. Rograk's Blood Hand is now going to be attacking for basically, well, I suppose it's currently at 3. I suppose we see 2 copies of Nullify discarded and a copy of Foresight. So we're preventing quite a bit of damage dealt out to our Eldar units, and even after that trio of shield cards, note that the Void Pirate is killed. We still have 11 cards in the hand of our Eldar player, so he's still got an attacker of the Black Guardians, which will attack for 2. Starbane's Council will be attacking for 5, so long as it takes a swing at exhausted units. Rograk's Blood Hand already has 1 point of damage. I suppose if we see a 2 shield icon card, that could very well preserve the life of Rograk's. We've yet to see the Mark of Chaos, which is the signature Chaos event, so that could very well save Rograk's Blood Hand, but let's see how this goes. I suppose we see an Orc Cannon fire, and of course that's going to be 2 indirect damage assigned among the units that are Eldar player controls, or a single point of damage that's increased to 2. It looks like Eldorath ended up taking that point of damage. We happen to see a Nullify, which is going to negate the other point of damage played as a shield, and the Gleeful Plague Beast is the unit that happens to pull that point of damage for Eric. We still have yet another Orc Cannon that's available to fire. We see an Archon's Terror played from our Eldar player, and that is going to banish the Gleeful Plague Beast to Zarathur's headquarters. So things are starting to look very, very bad for Zarathur being able to win this planet. There's a lot of opposition that he's up against. Eldorath is getting dangerously close to being bloodied, however, and he's going to lose a ton of his utility as soon as that does happen, if it does. Zarathur takes a point of damage indirectly from this Orc Cannon. It is not shielded. And how is Eldar going to deal with this one? He has to assign 1 point of damage, and it will of course be amplified by Zarathur. There are a lot of units sitting at this planet. Zarathur would have to use a combat action to retreat, because if he doesn't, if he chooses to attack, then he's going to be bloodied by this Starbane's Council or the Black Guardians, or, you know, it's almost all but certain to happen. And it seems as though George is still deciding where does he want to distribute that modified 2 points of damage. It looks like we see a copy of Archon's Terror, I believe just discarded as a shield, and that means the Black Guardians is only going to take a single point of damage instead of 2. So it's kind of an interesting proposition here. Zarathur could risk trying to knock out this Starbane's Council or something like that with an attack of 2, but seeing as how Grendel has 8 cards in hand, it's very, very likely indeed that he happens to have a shield. I guess Zarathur is being very risky, and he's taking a swing at the Black Guardians. That's kind of a very curious choice. He swings for 2, but we see the signature attachment from Eldorath discarded, Mobility, which is almost always used simply for shields, and that's going to prevent that damage entirely, and now Zarathur is going to be, I suppose, completely vulnerable to all of these attackers. Eldorath can attack for 1, the Black Guardians for 2, Starbane's Council can swing for 5. I'll be curious to see whether they decide to kill Rograk's Blood Hand, or whether they just try and outright bloody Zarathur. Zarathur ends up being quite neutered once he's on his bloodied side, so it's all in George's hands here. We do see Starbane's Council take a swing for 5 at Zarathur. Zarathur only has 4 hit points remaining. Do we see shield cards in Whiteblade's hand? We do happen to see a copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm, so it's only going to be 3 damage dealt out to Zarathur. I suppose it's possible he has another 2 shield card, like a Slaaneash's Temptation, and then another 1 shield card so that he can survive to the end of this combat round. That's very, very gutsy, though, and of course we still could see an Empower played out by our Eldar player, which would result in a guaranteed bloodying of Zarathur. So Eldorath takes a swing for 1. Are we going to see a 1 shield icon card? This ammo depot will allow Eric to replenish his hand if he does have a shield to get rid of here. We do see a copy of Warp Storm discarded, so maybe I'm right. Maybe we've got another 2 shield value card. And at this point, Ammo Depot is entirely eligible to be triggered. So Zarathur takes no damage from the direct attack of Eldorath. And now this Black Guardians is going to take its own turn, so it swings for 2. We actually see Zarathur bloodied, so he's now 1-5 with no ability whatsoever. And now, even though it's a very distant win condition for Eldorath, unless he manages to outright kill Zarathur now, only 5 hit points, things are looking a little bit dangerous. A new combat round is going to start if both players opt not to retreat. Eldorath chooses to stay, of course, because if he loses this planet, it's gonna go all the way bad for him. It looks like Eldorath has an action. Eric has not said whether or not he's going to stay. He's currently deciding that Ammo Depot can be triggered to draw him a card. And if he can manage to win with Rograk's Bloodhand, then that could totally win him the game. It's still entirely possible. He's got initiative, even though his Warlord is no longer present, so he could be conserving those shield cards specifically for Rograx. Of course, that Bloodthirst is not going to be taking effect here, but he does, he is going to be able to swing for 3. Eric does decide he's going to stay. We see 3 resources and 7 cards for Eldorath. Can he manage to make it through this one? That Starbane's Council is going to be in rough shape, as soon as it gets hit. And unless Eldar happens to have a 2 shield card like another Empower or something to that effect, then if that Starbane's Council is lost, things are going to start looking very, very grim for our Eldar player. Looks like our players are taking a moment to verify that Rograk's Bloodhand's attack value is not doubled, because our initial combat round is indeed done despite the Rogue Trader having left earlier in the round. We see Eldorath is outright bloodied by the 3 attack value Rograk's Bloodhand, and now we see a Starbane's Council take a swing for a staggering 5 at Rograx, and it is destroyed. So it looks like this planet is going to be won by our Eldar player. He's going to capture it, and that's going to grant him a grand total of 1 entire planet icon of each type, so 1 of each color. The earliest time any game-ending play could be seen is at Planum here, just because that's got the strong point icon that Eric would need. I suppose we won't see a victory for Eldar once again until our very final planet of the game, just because no icons are going to accumulate long enough. So hopefully this command struggle, just domination that Eldorath is starting to establish, is going to pay dividends for him. Both of our warlords are now bloodied, so Eldorath and Zarathur both lose just a ton of their utility. Now Starbane's Council and these Black Guardians are both going to be in the HQ. It looks as though Eric missed out on the opportunity to use this Ammo Depot, so unless I'm mistaken, that's 3 missed support triggers that could have helped so much, potentially in the outcome of this rather close game. Eric has 4 resources, 5 cards as the new deploy phase starts. The initiative token is now in Eldar's hands, and he happens to have 7 resources, 9 cards. He's just got a ton of units on the table here. We see that at the present moment, command is being won on each and every planet planet 1, 2, not 3, by our Eldar player. And as soon as he can manage to trump this single Splintered Path Acolyte, that means each and every planet is being won by him. At this point, both warlords are going to have a significant bit of a retinue deploying with them. We could easily see Eldar sent to this final planet to trump command there. He's got that would be nice in allowing him to block our Zarathur from potentially winning the game at that planet. That could allow him to shift a non-warlord unit about. Farron is going to allow a non-warlord to be routed, and there's currently quite a bit of stuff staring down the Eldar forces at the first planet, although with 7 resources it seems quite likely that Eldar is going to be able to purchase back this Slith mercenary near the end of this initial deploy round here, not only to ensure that he wins command, but also to get that 2 attack value attacker on his side. We see another copy of Starbane's Council put out at the second planet, where the initiative is not going to be in the hands of our Eldar player, and now things are starting to look very bad indeed for Zarathur, just because he's not going to be able to manipulate damage quite to the extent that he could. He's starting to run out of resources. He doesn't have nearly as many cards as our Eldar player, and he's already starting to lose command, so it seems as though, despite Eldar starting off pretty roughly, in playing the long game, he could totally come back and win it all. The opportunity to deploy is now in the hands of Chaos, so what are we going to see? It seems as if we see yet another gleeful plague beast, this time played out at planet number 2, and that's going to be potentially killing this Incubus warrior, unless our Eldar player happens to be free with shield icons. It's a 5 hit point unit that's a pretty stellar target for Starbane's Council. Initiative does happen to be in the hands of Eldorath, who puts out a Warlock Destructor opposite that gleeful plague beast as well, so it seems as though that's potentially going to be pretty nasty. If Zarathur were to deploy to that planet, it sets him up to potentially steal the initiative token, but it also puts him in a very, very rough spot for being destroyed by his gleeful plague beasts and a single attack, and all of these Eldar units are swinging for at least 3, which would be exactly enough to kill Zarathur if he doesn't have any shield icons. We do see Zarathur happen to pass. I imagine that this Slith mercenary is going to be stolen, but I suppose that may not actually happen. In regard to where our units would like to be deployed, I guess we now see no more Splintered Path Acolyte at planet number 3. That must have been sacrificed to help fund that gleeful plague beast, so we just now see a sweeping command victory for Eldar. Zarathur, I'm not sure. He could go to planet number 1 to rout a unit. That seems like that'd be pretty important. But at the same time, there's a lot of opposition he's up against, presuming that this Slith mercenary is going to be stolen by our Eldar player. He could deploy to Karnath to deposit that gleeful plague beast there, and we do see the Slith mercenary stolen by George. And I believe our players are now finally ready to move into command. All right, so Eric is deciding where to send his warlord, as is George. I'm very curious to see. I think really any planet would be a decent option for Eldorath. I could see this final planet. I could see anywhere. Looks like Eldorath is going to go to planet number 1, whereas Zarathur is going to go to planet number 2. So that's going to be both of these gleeful plague beasts sitting there at this planet. We've not seen Zarathur move from the HQ quite yet, and of course this Black Guardians also has to leave our Eldar player's HQ, so this is a giant warlord retinue sitting at this first planet here. It's all but guaranteed that Eldorath is indeed going to win it, and we see quite the command sweep for Eldar, even though we are going to ultimately have 1 card and 1 resource pulled in by Eric. George is just going to absolutely put that to shame. He's going to be pulling in 2 cards and 5 resources. So at the present moment, Zarathur has 2 resources, 5 cards. He does happen to have these 3 supports in play, but our Eldar player has 5 resources and 9 cards. So at any point, we could see a copy of Empower, and we could also see a couple copies of Gift of Isha. All right, it seems as though after a brief break, our players are both now back. The combat phase is going to begin, and the Plague Beasts, swamping planet number 2, are activating. We see an Incubus Warrior destroyed. Those Plague Beasts are each going to take 2 points of damage from one another's abilities. Zarathur is, of course, going to be taking a total of 2 points of damage, which is going to put him dangerously close to being outright killed. It looks as though Starbane's Council and the Warlock Destructor each take 2 points of damage. Keep in mind, we've got 9 cards in our Eldar player's hand and 5 resources. We see a promotion discarded as a shield card, so that one of the Starbane's Council actually only takes a single point of damage. And there we go. We finally see that second point of damage on Zarathur. So we're going to see a battle at the first planet. All that Eric happens to have is this Heretic Inventor. He, of course, does have 2 Orc Cannons. He's got 2 resources, which is enough for an Archon's Terror. It's not enough for a Warp Storm, which would be a pretty fantastic means of clearing out the vast majority of units at this planet. We do see an Orc Cannon. Is it going to be targeting Farron here? Routing a unit is going to be pretty handy for Eldorath because he could, just rout this gleeful Plague Beast that happens to be sitting here unexhausted and just finish depleting some of the lingering, still remaining Chaos forces here. I believe that this Orc Cannon is targeting the second planet, because one of the gleeful Plague Beasts has taken another point of damage, and now it's only a single point of damage that our Eldar player is going to have to contend with, because Zarathur happens to be bloodied. And ultimately, the Starbane's Council is going to take that point of damage. There's 1 Orc Cannon remaining. That Ammo Depot also happens to be remaining. The Orc Cannon, the unexhausted one, now exhausts 2 fire. And that's going to be another point of damage to a Gleeful Plague Beast, which is all but certainly going to be routed. And another point of damage, this time put onto the Warlock Destructor. So it's still plenty of cards in hand for our Eldar player, very few resources, and not a lot of cards for Zarathur. Looks like Eric indicates he's finally done with actions, and I believe at this point we can get on to our battle at the first planet. In regard to command units, we've got the Slith Mercenaries that would attack for 2. We've got Spirit Seer Erithal, which would attack for 2 and pull damage off of units. As the very first action, we see Eldorath retreat, which is kind of interesting. That's now going to give this Heretic Inventor an opportunity to swing for 3. So I suppose we're just seeing it played extremely, extremely cautiously by Eldar, just because he's not going to have any opportunity to heal whatsoever, apart from the Spirit Seer here. So it's going to be Eric's opportunity to attack something with this Heretic Inventor, but what is it going to be? Okay, so our Heretic Inventor finally takes a swing at the Starbane's Council, and it's going to be outright destroyed, brought to -1 hit point. And now Spirit Seer Erithal is going to return fire to that Heretic Inventor, and it's going to be able to strip a point of damage off of that Black Guardians. And now the Slith Mercs is going to also take a swing at the Heretic Inventor, which is destroyed, and that means Farron is going to be won by our Eldar player, unless we happen to see some kind of crazy event that doesn't actually exist that could wipe out the entire Eldar army, and not even a Warp Storm could do that if our Chaos player happened to have an additional 1 resource in hand. If Zarathur were sitting at that planet and no shield cards were done, that would be possible, but Zarathur is presently bloodied. And of course, Farron routs this full ready, not full hit point, Gleeful Plague Beast. So now it's only Zarathur and an exhausted Plague Beast staring down both of these formidable Eldar combatants. So the initiative token is going to be in the hands of Zarathur. I can only imagine that he's going to be retreating, and then this Gleeful Plague Beast's life is going to be forfeit, and that sets up our Chaos player to look even worse for the remainder of this game. Zarathur does decide to spend his one and only combat action in order to retreat, and that's going to be an attack of 3 and an attack of 5, coming in at this Gleeful Plague Beast, which does happen to be outright destroyed. The first planet was, of course, won by our Eldar player, who now has 2 red, 1 green, 1 blue icon, relative to the 1 red, 2 green, 1 blue icon for Chaos. So Planum is 1, and at this point, any non-warlord unit controlled by the Eldar player can be moved to the planet of his choice. So he could pull this Black Guardians, he could pull the Spirit Seer Erithal, anything exactly that he would like. It ends up being the Black Guardians. 2, it looks like the new first planet. Alright, so it looks like at this moment Eric is actually calling out GG. He's called out good game. Just in taking a look at the remainder of the forces here on the table, Eldar would definitely have to win the next 2 turns to ultimately win, but very well played by both of our players. Congratulations to our Eldar player George Tinkham, who happened to win it all. Very well played once again from Eric Keilback. Very much appreciate his allowing me to record him. So, well played on part of both players. As always, I'll just conclude this video by saying, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so, or as ever, if you are already subscribed, I'd very much appreciate if you share this video, as the more players that eventually stumble upon this game, the more players we might eventually rope into joining our Conquest community. So, if you'd like updates regarding upcoming videos and projects, I'd be honored were you to like my Facebook page or follow me on Twitter, and if at any point you'd like to help me recoup some of my operating expenses or file hosting expenses, you're welcome to check out my Patreon page. But as ever, thank you once again for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.